Yes, you've got to love that little tune, and I figured since it was an underused weapons tradition, I have to put it on there. I was thinking, we've gotten to this point, you guys might be tired of that music, but then I thought about it, I was like, there's no way you're tired of that theme song. The theme song's awesome, you can never get tired of it, but we are indeed using the AN-94 today, and this is an interesting weapon to me, because you guys know it's one of my favorite weapons in the game. But we're not just doing the AN-94. No, that would be way too easy. There's plenty of people out there that use the AN-94, myself included. No, we're doing the AN-94 fully auto. Yes, you heard me right, fully auto. We are disgracing the beauty of the 2-round burst and using the select fire option to make this thing a 600 round per minute. I was going to say monster, but it's more like a rabbit, because this thing is not very deadly on fully auto. It is definitely a shell of itself when you use the select fire to change it to fully auto. So the AN-94 does have the burst option, which is its default setting. Then it has the single fire, and it also has the fully auto. And I've always noticed the select fire options on a lot of weapons aren't used all too often. I mean, there's really not a lot of situations where you'd rather have a single fire weapon. The one weapon I have used quite religiously with single fire was the G3. I found that that is pretty good, especially if you're going to be sniping people at longer ranges. If you've ever seen my assault sniper video where I put a 6x zoom scope on the G3 with a bipod and just sit there and snipe people on single fire, that was a good way to go about single fire, but for the most part, it's a pretty underused feature on a lot of weapons. And I was thinking about it, I was like, man, I see the AN-94 quite often. I mean, there's a lot of people who are just absolutely monsters with the AN-94 on burst, but then I thought about it, I was like, man, does anyone even consider using this thing on fully auto? I mean, the option's there, and not a lot of people use it. I know way back when my buddy Sweat was on console, he was trying to get 500 kills with every weapon, which he eventually did. And he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I hate the AN-94, I hate the AN-94. I'm like, how can you hate the AN-94? That weapon's so much fun. He's like, well, I don't like burst weapons, and I was using it on fully auto, and it's just garbage. And I was just like, whoa, you're using it on fully auto? What's wrong with you? It's so good on burst fire. Why would anyone want to use it on fully auto? And I think that really kind of shows just why no one uses it. I mean, it is definitely an underused weapon on fully auto. You do not see anyone running around with that. But in my adventures to kind of explore the world of the 600 round per minute AN-94, I found it handles pretty similar to when you have it on 2-round burst. It's pretty much the same. The recoil patterns don't change. Now you do have to compensate for the fact that you're shooting a lot more rounds in a shorter amount of time, because when you're burst firing, you usually kind of spread out your burst. You try to be a little bit more accurate with it. With this, you're just trying to control your spread, trying to control that recoil, and I found that pulling down on this weapon and going fully auto is something that's actually quite feasible. I do that pretty often, actually. I found that it works pretty well if you know how to compensate for recoil, so that's one of the big advantages to it, I guess. If you're a fully auto guy and you've never really tried the AN-94, just because you don't like burst fire, I mean, maybe you could find something to love in the 600 rounds per minute. I personally don't like it. I'd rather go burst, but let's say you're in a room like you're here on Firestorm. Firestorm, tons of long lines of sight, tons of areas where the AN-94 on burst is just going to excel. But then you get into some of these rooms, some of these warehouses, and yeah, maybe it's better to have fully auto. Now, 600 rounds per minute, let's face it, it's pretty slow. I mean, it's slower than the L85, slower than the AK-74M. The only thing that this thing is faster than is the G3, but the G3 does more damage, and that's kind of the trade-off because it shoots a 7.62. So yeah, there are some downsides to going 600 rounds per minute. I think that it really kind of limits you in certain areas, but for the most part, I think it could be a feasible option. If you train yourself to switch between fully auto and burst fire, yeah, maybe at that point you can find some love in the 600 rounds per minute. Me personally, rather go burst in all situations, because a lot of people like to say the AN-94 does not handle well. They don't think it handles well in close quarters. I personally disagree with that. I find that it works dandy in close quarters, especially on burst fire. I find that I have no problems whatsoever taking out opponents in close quarters when it's on burst, because you can pretty much spam the trigger from the hip to the point where the fully auto function in my eyes is just kind of obsolete. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys ever use the AN-94 on fully auto? Because this was the first time that I've ever actually tried it, so it was kind of an interesting experience for me, and it was today's quote underused weapons. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you next time. Peace.